What?
Phil, we're about to roll here.
All right. 2, 4, 6, 7.
Will the Senate please come to order? We will observe a moment of silence in lieu of a devotional. Thank you. Are there any announcements? Seeing none, we have bills for referral. We have Senate Bill S-232 being on the calendar for notice and carrying an appropriation under Rule 31 is referred to the Committee on Appropriations. S-325 being on the calendar for notice and carrying an appropriation under Rule 31 is referred to the Committee on Appropriations. S-327 being on the calendar for notice and carrying an appropriation under Rule 31 is referred to the Committee on Appropriations. We have a House bill for reference. H753, an act relating to utility service disconnections and ratepayer protections, introduced by Representative Torre and others. It passed the House on March 13th of 2026. Listen to the first reading.
H753, an act relating to utility service disconnections and ratepayer protections.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill. It is referred to the Committee on Finance. We now have H849, an act relating to civil action for damage for deprivation of federal constitutional rights of any government official, introduced by Representative Lalonde. It passed the House on March 13th of 2026. Listen to the first reading.
H849, an act relating to a civil action for damages for deprivation of federal constitutional rights by any government official.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill. It's referred to the Committee on Judiciary. Orders of the day. We have S189 for third reading. Are there any amendments to be offered prior to third reading? Seeing none, listen to third reading.
S189, an act relating to an approval process for reducing or eliminating hospital services.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill, and the question is, shall S189 pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we have passed S189. We now have S203 for third reading. Are there any amendments prior to third reading? Seeing none, listen to the third reading.
S203, an act relating to penalties for second or subsequent violations of operating a motor vehicle under the influence of alcohol or drugs.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we've passed S203. We now have S313. Are there any amendments prior to third reading? Seeing none, listen to the third reading.
S313, an act relating to transforming Vermont's career technical education system.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed S313. We have on the calendar for action S138, an act relating to commercial property assessed clean energy projects. It was introduced on April 1st of 2025, and it was referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as it appears starting on page 606 of today's calendar. And when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Listen to the second reading of the bill.
S138, An act relating to commercial property assessed clean energy projects.
I recognize the senator from Addison, Senator Hardy, for the report of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. For those of you who would like to follow along the calendar, this is on page 606 of today's calendar. CPACE is a term that means Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Projects, so CPACE projects. And it's a program that it's a financing tool that allows property owners to finance the upfront costs of qualified energy, water, and resilience projects with funding through a voluntary assessment through a town's property tax bill. So it is something that's been adopted by over 30 states, so this is not a new concept that would be unique to Vermont. And also Vermont already has what's called a residential PACE program for homeowners. So homeowners could get this financing mechanism already to put solar panels on their house or to insulate their house or something. But the residential program has not been very well utilized. Not a lot of residential property owners have taken it up, and not a lot of towns have opted to do the residential program. But we think that there might be more towns and more property owners who are interested in the commercial property assessed clean energy projects, or CPACE. And so that is why your Committee on Natural Resources has moved forward with creating this bill. You can follow along, and I'm going to take you a little bit through section by section with some commentary involved. First, to create a CPACE program, of towns, a legislative body must vote to allow it. So the select board, city council, board of alder people need to vote to say, yes, we want to create a CPACE district. That district is essentially the entire town, but they need to vote to do it because it is using the town's property tax collection mechanism as a way to collect loan payments. And it also puts a lien on the property that travels with the property to make sure that that loan is repaid. So the town votes to create a CPACE district, and then the property owners, which are in this case commercial property, so they can be businesses, warehouses, apartment buildings with more than 4 units. So this is not residential. These are our business owners who want to upgrade their property to make them more energy efficient, to make them more resilient to flooding, to make them use less water. And so they would apply to be part of the CPACE program. Before they're allowed, there has to be a vote of the town or a vote of the town's legislative body. And they have to get an energy analysis to make sure that the projects they're proposing are actually going to save energy or save water or make their buildings more resilient. So there's a process for making sure that the proposed fixes to the property are going to actually indeed be more energy resilient. And you can see this on the bottom of page 607 to top of page 608 is the analysis that they need to do. Where energy or water usage is proposed, an energy analysis by a licensed engineer or engineering firm that shows that this would result in decreased use of energy or water or reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. So in each case, it's an energy study by a licensed engineer that would certify that these programs are actually going to, or that this work is actually going to do what it needs to do. So that's 2 things. The third thing is that they need to get permission from their mortgage lender. And the mortgage lender has to provide permission so that the lien on the property for the CPACE program would go ahead of the mortgage lien in the sort of list of financial liens on the property, so that the CPACE program would only be behind property taxes. So if something happens, the property owner would have to first pay back property taxes, second pay the CPACE loan, and then third the mortgage, and then fourth any other, et cetera. But in order for that to happen, they've got to get permission from the bank that holds their mortgage. And once they've gotten that permission, and the bank will do their own analysis to decide whether it's a good risk for the bank, once they've done that, then they can go into the CPACE program. And that you can see this language on page 609 in the middle of the page. Paragraph E, prior to entering into the written assessment contract, the property owner shall obtain and furnish to the municipality a written statement executed by each holder of a mortgage or deed of trust on the property, securing indebtedness in their sole and absolute discretion, that consents to the assessment and indicates that the assessment does not constitute an event of default under the mortgage or deed of trust. So this is to protect banks and other mortgage holders from a default because of a CPACE loan. So we wanted to make sure that banks were protected, the mortgagees were protected, mortgagers, both of them, everybody's protected, and that and that also that towns are protected. So that they do not have to put the town funding on the line for this. So after they get permission from the select board, the lender, the town can, and they've done the energy analysis, then they get a CPACE loan through a regular lending organization that is providing CPACE loans. It could be another bank in our community, or there are national organizations that provide these loans. Or it could be VITA. VITA also is potentially interested in being a lender in this program. And then a town can contract with a program administrator to administer this program, to collect the payments, to provide all of the information to the lender. And so there is a section in the bill. It is section 3277 on the top of page 610, the CPACE program administration. And towns can, as I said, contract with program administrators to administer the program, so that towns are not on the hook for actually administrating it. I think one really important provision is that the town, a municipality, that unlike the residential property, and this is one of the reasons why lots of towns have not subscribed to the residential program, because there is some financial risk for towns to do it. But in this program, we made sure that there is no financial risk to towns. So in section 4 on page 11, a municipality that enters into a written agreement with a property owner under subchapter 3 of this chapter shall not incur any indebtedness or otherwise finance projects under this chapter, nor shall be liable for the failure of the performance of the project, nor pledge the full faith and credit of the municipality. So municipalities do not have to pledge their full faith and credit. They do not have to be financially obligated for the project, or they don't have to be obligated for the project actually saving energy or doing those things. That is on the property owner and the lender to determine. And so we wanted to make sure that towns were not taken advantage of in this program. So just really quickly going through the bill, now that you have all the basics of it, the first section of the bill, starting on top of page 607, lays out the vote of the municipality, the agreements between the municipality and the lenders, the process for doing the energy analysis, and the process for getting permission from the bank and the mortgage holder for making sure that they have permission. top of page 610 is the language about program administrators and the requirements for program administrators. These are entities that towns can contract with. We made sure that a bank can't be a lender and a program administrator. They can be one or the other, but they can't do both jobs. Then there's a section about the rights of property owners, the liability of the municipality, and the release of the lien on the property. And this is after the release of the lien is after the full loan has been paid. And then collection of assessments is done by the program administrator. And a lien for an assessment of this chapter shall be exempt from the provisions of this section except upon receipt of consent from lenders. So again, making sure the lenders agree to it. And a lot of the language in here is just integrating the CPACE program into the residential PACE program. This would take effect on July 1st, and the first ones that could start to happen are January 1st of next year after a town has voted to create a CPACE district. The vote in committee was 5-0-0, and we heard from a number of witnesses, including the sponsor of the bill, the senator from Chittenden South, Senator Chittenden, of course, our legislative council, the Bankers Association, the Department of Financial Regulations, the VEDA, the Vermont Economic Development Authority, the League of Cities and Towns, the Chamber of Commerce, and then a board member of the CPACE Alliance, which is a national organization that advocates and oversees CPACE programs nationally. And so a lot of the language in here was recommended as part of the sort of national sort of standards for these programs. Again, the vote was 5-0-0, and we hope the Senate will support this. It just provides another financing mechanism for towns and property owners to use to make sure that properties are as energy efficient as possible, Mr. President. Thank you.
The question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy? Senator from Essex.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm sorry.
I was wondering if I could ask a,
The reporter is interrogated.
wondering if I could interrogate the reporter of the bill, please. Mr. President, section 3276, page 607, written agreements, consent of property owners, energy savings analysis, lenders' consents, going down through A and B and 1 and all of that. It basically says that there needs to be a full-scale analysis of the efficiencies of the project, or whether the project will pay back. And I was just wondering if the committee took any testimony from some of the environmental groups, such as VPIRG or other ones, that this would be cost prohibitive to the project moving forward.
We did not hear from VPIRG, but we did hear from as I said, the CPACE sort of board member that oversees these programs nationally, and this is a very standard component of these programs nationally. The point of them is, as I said, to upgrade properties to make them more energy efficient. Sometimes that means putting solar panels on them. Sometimes it means re-insulating them, et cetera, changing something, their water heaters or things like that. This is a standard part of the agreements nationally to make sure that they are meeting energy efficient needs and the standards of national, state, or local standards for energy efficiency.
I guess why I raised the question, Mr. President, is that we spent a little time in Senate Ag on some projects and proposing that any of the solar projects that are to move forward should have this study. And we heard testimony from various groups of folks that said that this was impossible to do, and it would prohibit any project from being able to move forward. So I just find it odd that they wouldn't have come in and expressed those same concerns. I thank the reporter of the bill, and I just find it very, very odd that that the same concerns are being raised in one area, wouldn't be raised in another. Actually deemed almost impossible for those types of analysis to be conducted to move a project forward and would price it out of the market. But thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of questions. One, maybe I missed it when I interrogated the report of the bill. I'm
The
sorry.
reporter is interrogated.
I can't see in here, and I probably just read over it. I see where the legislative body puts it out to a vote, and the voters vote to get into the district, but I don't see a place where they can opt out of this, Mr. President, after everything has been.
That is a good question. I don't think that, so once they've created the district, these are loans that are 20 to 30-year loans. And so they could probably vote to say, we're not going to do any more. But once one is entered into, they kind of have to stick with it until the loan is repaid. But we don't have explicit language, I don't believe, that would require a vote to get out of a district or to de-designate a district. But I think it would probably just take a vote of the legislative body to say, no, we don't want to do any more of these. But we could add language to make that more clear if that would help the questioner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make sure that they may not be locked into eternity in reference to this, and they do have that ability to opt out if they so choose. The second one is, you mentioned a special assessment in several different places throughout. Is that a tax?
It is not. So it is called a special assessment because the collection of the loan, it's basically a loan repayment or a loan repayment. And it is collected through the mechanism of property tax collection. So if there's a building in the town that is part of the CPACE program, when the town collects the property tax payments, they would also collect the payments from these CPACE loans. Or they can contract with a program administrator to collect the payments from the towns. The towns are involved in large part because the towns have to put a lien on the property, and the lien on the property is essentially the collateral for the repayment of these loans. So it is not a tax, it is a loan repayment.
Thank you, Mr. President. And one final question on page 611 at the top of the page, where it's underlined, a municipality may charge fees to cover the operation under this chapter. Who are these fees charged to?
Yeah, they may charge the fees to the entities, the businesses who are taking out the loans or participating in the CPACE program. So if there are 10 businesses that are participating in the program, in order to cover the cost of the administration of the program, they could charge fees to do so, to pay the program administrator or to cover their own costs. But they're not state fees, they're municipal fees.
I thank the reporter. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I interrogate the reporter?
The reporter is interrogated.
Thank you, Mr. President. So admirable goal. I understand the intent of the project or intent of the bill, but I missed it in the explanation of the bill. So what is the benefit of this legislation versus a direct arrangement between a commercial entity that owns the property and the borrower? What I fail to understand is why the state is involved in this arrangement from the get-go. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for that question, Mr. President. I will totally admit that the committee, it took us a long time to understand this program, and we went over and over and over again with testimony in order to understand it, having witnesses in twice in some cases to say, can you say that again? And so it is a little complicated to understand, but the reason that these loans become possible is because the municipality places a lien on the property as collateral for the property, and that lien or for the loan, and that lien stays with the property. So if a property owner sells the property, Say it's a warehouse that has had a new heating system installed in it through a CPACE loan that has shown that this new heating system will reduce the energy cost for the building. And that owner of the building decides to sell the building. They can sell the building, but the lien will stay on the property until the full CPACE loan is repaid. And so it gives the ability to have a lower interest rate and to have a longer term loan that is secured by the lien on the property. And the reason the state has to be involved is because we have to give permission to municipalities to place liens on property for this purpose. And again, as I said, this program is law in more than 30 states. So there are a lot of other states, including our neighbor to the east, New Hampshire, has a CPACE property program, and many, many other states do. So this is something that states do as a way to provide different types of capital and financing for business owners to make improvements to their properties.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I appreciate the feedback from the reporter. So I'm going to try to boil it down. What I think I heard is I understand that the lien stays on the property, essentially on the project, the energy efficiency project, which fully understand, but that the concept of this program results in a lower, essentially lower rate terms on the overall project. So if that sums it up in a nutshell, Mr. President, I would appreciate that acknowledgement.
Yes, I think that you're correct. It also allows for the first mortgager to give permission to get back in line, to get placed further back in line for loan repayments. So without the ability of the CPACE program to require that a lender approve it, there wouldn't be this sort of reordering of lenders and in the line of who gets paid first, second, and third.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank the reporter.
Senator from Windsor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in full support of this bill, and I'm deeply appreciative of Senate Natural Resources taking the time on this complex, unique, but important financial tool for businesses. I wanted to highlight that residential PACE has existed in our state for quite a long time. And in Hartford in particular, we went through the process of creating a residential PACE district, I think is the right word. And we saw lower than desired interest in the program, largely because it is a specialized tool that unless you're doing a long range program or project, you might not invest the time and effort to go through this type of complex relationship. I wanted to highlight that when you reduce, like the main goal of this is oftentimes energy projects like switching to heat pumps or weatherizing your business or home, that costs significant money up front, but you save substantial amounts over the lifetime of the project. That means you're reducing your electric bill, reducing your water bill, and a business, and why businesses in our area are so excited for this program and want to see this bill pass, is that means they have reduced day-to-day costs that then they can reinvest into other parts of their business, like raising the wages of their employees, investing in growth. All of that can't happen when you have lots of fixed costs that continue to rise. So I see this project, or this bill, as bringing us in line with our neighbors in New Hampshire, frankly, who are really thrilled about it. And when we're competing against Lebanon and West Lebanon for business space and warehouse space, where they're going to decide to go on what side of the river can depend on programs like this. So I'm extremely grateful for the committee, and I hope that the Senate votes in favor of it as I will.
Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just sharing, historically, this was first developed years and years ago, and the PACE program, I think, began in California. And when we brought it into our committee in Natural Resources and Energy, the toughest part of this was the financing piece and bringing investors in to support the program. It's called a district. And at that time, residents across different municipalities were trying to come together to do this. and we've seen how very difficult it is for residential properties. Having said that, as we're moving forward with an individual property, it's no longer, it's a district, but it's still now it's an individual property. Now perhaps we can think about how to better incorporate some of the housing development that we're looking at into a district in a new way. So this is something that the Senate Natural Resources and Energy has brought to us. I think it's a good step forward. We do need to take care about the liability issues, because that will continue to be a concern regardless of what happens to the program. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of this bill to offer a comment and against the advice of Dick Mazda to offer some appreciation. He never liked it when he raised it and said thank you to the committee. But I want to thank the reporter and the whole committee for taking this bill up. I was the introducer of this bill, and you can see it was very short. The work that you did was truly phenomenal. So I know there's a lot of UVM students that have been following this too. I just want to frame what I see the value of this is, because I think it touches upon a few of the comments that were made here. What this does is align the long-term benefits with short-term interests. So if you are a commercial developer, if you have in your portfolio commercial properties and you're thinking about doing something like this came up on the campaign trail, I love solar panels. I just don't like them all along Route 7 and farm fields where I'd rather have houses. So what I say is I'd rather have those solar panels over parking lots. And if you want to make the math work on putting solar panels over parking lots to serve as carports so that we dual use the impermeable surface, you got to make the numbers work. And CPACE is something that other states have used, because if you're not planning to keep that property, whatever that is, be it a warehouse, be it the University Mall, which I think many of us are familiar with, if you want to make those numbers work, the U-Mall is going through a transition of ownership. To invest in the steel cantilever structures that would have to go up so that you could get plows underneath the solar panels, it's a big amount of money, but it starts to make sense if you don't necessarily have to keep paying it off over the entire life of the project. So CPACE allows that debt for that improvement to carry with the project. So even if you sell the parcel, somebody else owns it, that debt does not need to be resolved at the transfer of ownership. It can continue to be paid off as the benefit is achieved. So I think it's a financing tool that is applicable for now resiliency. It's a great addition by the committee. So I'm really glad to see this bill move forward. And I hope it actually helps in making numbers work so that we can get more solar panels over parking lots than over fields. But I'll leave it at that, Mr. President. Thank you.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Essex.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just some comments about solar attached to buildings. In real estate, when you pull up into a project of any sort, whether it's a commercial building or a house to be sold and there's solar panels on there, you have one question. And the question is, how much do you owe on the solar? I can think of residential, which I realize this is commercial, but I pulled in one time and I said, well, how's your solar? Oh, great. Yeah, it's doing good. And I said, well, what's your payment on your solar? Well, it's $11.38 a month. I said, okay, that's good. Yeah, $11.38. How long? 25 years. Okay, $11.38. Okay. Well, what was your bill before your solar was there? $200 a month. I said, well, what have you added since you put your solar? Oh, nothing. She said, but I don't have an electric bill. I said, well, you do. It's $11.38 a month. Well, that's Russ. You don't understand. That's for the solar panels. And I'm like, well, no, listen, you went from $200 a month. Now you're $11.38 a month, and it's for 25 years. So I get very nervous when I hear about the benefits of solar and how well it goes, because it isn't in real estate. It is not a great thing. It really, really isn't. I get the overall mission of reducing the loads of electricity and things. So I get very nervous when I see bills like this. The one reason I can support this bill is because of the involvement of the lenders up front and understanding what the project is, and then also the towns as well, and that they could, they certainly would have a say in whether this was an equitable situation. But again, I get very, very nervous when I hear the benefits of what solar is when they're attached to buildings, because it isn't all unicorns and pixie dust all the time in the business. So thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy? Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise mainly just because I'm very enthusiastic about this bill, and I want to highlight one aspect. I mean, we've talked a lot about solar panels just now, but in terms of resiliency, in other states, the resiliency aspect has looked like Things like changing your landscaping so that it's not so prone to wildfires. In Vermont, resiliency might look like elevating your building. It might look like raising the utilities above the flood level. And I say that so that you all have it in your minds as potential messengers back out to your communities. Should communities need tools or resources for disaster relief, for capital to make improvements, that this is one that might be useful in your own communities. Thank you.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And you have amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy. The question now is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of S-138. We have on the calendar for action S-181, introduced on January 6th of 2026. It was referred to the Committee on Judiciary, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as it appears starting on page 613 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Listen to the second reading of the bill.
S-181, an act relating to eliminating the requirement for a pre-sentence investigation for imposition of a deferred sentence.
Recognize the senator from Windham, Senator Hashim, for the report of the Committee on Judiciary.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this is day two of starting off the bill presentation by describing it as a small technical change. The bill can be located on page 613 of today's calendar. So the bill is related to deferred sentences and pre-sentence investigation reports. A deferred sentence is a type of sentence in which a defendant pleads guilty and is placed on probation. If they successfully complete probation, their guilty verdict is struck and their record is expunged. If they do not complete probation, then the underlying sentence can be imposed. It's a sort of high-risk, high-reward type of sentence. But one of the procedural requirements, which can only be waived by the prosecutor or through agreement, is a pre-sentence investigation, also known as a PSI. This is a process that's imposed on DOC employees, specifically probation and parole, and involves gathering a large amount of information about a defendant prior to their sentencing. And one concern I've heard both in testimony and in practice is that in certain situations, this has become an unnecessary redundancy. So S-181 proposes to remove the ability for the state to be the only party that can waive a PSI for non-listed offenses. The rationale behind this is that by the time both parties have presented their evidence and closed their arguments, the judge should have sufficient information to decide if a deferred sentence is appropriate. If a judge does determine that more information is needed, they could still order a PSI under Rule 32 of the Vermont Rules of Criminal Procedure. And so while this is a very small change, we did hear testimony that it is one step that could help alleviate backlogs and resolve cases a bit more efficiently. We heard from Legislative Counsel, the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs, the Field Operations Manager from DOC, the Defender General's Office, and the Chief Superior Judge of the Vermont Judiciary. The vote in committee was 5-0-0, and I ask for the Senate support.
The question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Judiciary? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we have amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Judiciary. The question now is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of S-181. Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. If we could, I would move to pass over S-206 and move directly to the rest of the calendar with the idea of coming back to 206 a little later in the session.
We have on the calendar for action S219, introduced on January 8th of 2026. It was referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as set forth in today's calendar, starting on page 624, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. The bill was then referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which reports that it has considered the bill and recommends that the amendment proposed by the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy be amended as set forth in today's calendar, starting on page 626, and that when amended, the bill ought to pass. Listen to the second reading of the bill.
S219, an act relating to an Energy Navigator program report.
I recognize the senator from Addison, Senator Hardy, for the report of the committee.
Thank you. I'm back, everybody.
Deja vu.
Haha. S219 is a bill about energy navigators. And I just want to start by talking, I think probably most of us know what energy navigators are, but they are people who come into homes, invited by the way, and help homeowners, generally homeowners, but also businesses, find ways to reduce their energy costs. This sounds a little like deja vu for sure, Mr. President, but it is a way to say maybe you could replace your windows and this would help you lower your heating costs, or that hot water heater is really, really old. If you buy a new one, you could reduce your hot water costs. And they also help connect people to programs that are state programs, local programs, federal programs to help finance that. So they might actually help a business learn about CPACE if we pass both of these bills. These are already existing though, by the way. So there are energy navigators already embedded in a lot of the work that already happens in the state and in local and nonprofit organizations. So the Efficiency Vermont has energy navigators. A couple of them work in person, in face-to-face, but a lot of it is remote energy navigators. Our community action agencies like CVOEO and NeighborWorks, they have energy navigators that are really focused on helping lower income Vermonters access programs. And then there are some of our utilities have energy navigators. So this is a concept that already exists and has existed for many years. And there are other kinds of navigators. There are healthcare navigators. There are probably other kinds of navigators. But this is not a new concept. But recently, there have been a few things that have sort of led to wanting to look more closely at energy navigator programs and figuring out how we could improve them. Excuse me. One is that there was a report issued by the Public Utility Commission last December 1st, and this was looking at all types of energy programs for lower income Vermonters and how we could improve those. This was sort of in the wake of the whole debate about, I actually don't even want to say it on the floor. It feels like saying Macbeth if you're on the in a play, but in the program that we passed a couple of years ago and then didn't move forward with. But there were a lot of reports that came out of it about how to improve energy, lower energy costs for Vermonters and improve energy efficiency. So they recommended in this report, the PUC recommended that we look at energy navigators and increase the number of energy navigators that are available to Vermonters so that they know about the programs that exist and know how to reduce their energy costs. And that is also leading to an already in progress project through the Public Service Department to look more broadly at energy programs. There are over 20 programs for lower income Vermonters, and they want to look at how can we maybe make those programs work better. So they're already doing a report. And what this bill asks them to do is to look at energy navigators and create a program design for how to improve in-person, hands-on energy navigators. And there are a couple programs, and one that I will mention because it is in my district is the Climate Energy Action Center of Addison County. and they have a hands-on, in-person Energy Navigator program that is run by volunteers, and so it's very low cost. And they have been really successful in getting people to sign up and getting them to participate in lowering their energy costs. And they've been particularly good at helping moderate income Vermonters. And many other towns have actually asked the Addison County group, how can we get what you have? So I know Shelburne has asked if they can, Brandon has asked, Huntington and Rochester. So the sort of surrounding areas are all really interested in getting in on this really great program. And so this bill is asking for a program design or a report back from the Public Service Department, the Department of Public Service, to design to do a third-party consultant to design a Vermont community-based energy navigator and coaching program in collaboration with the Climate Energy Action Center of Addison County and other existing community-based navigator programs in Vermont that will provide in-person and remote energy coaching services to residential customers and communities statewide. So how can we bring this statewide? Recently, several of our neighbors, including Massachusetts and Connecticut, have done this. They have in-person, hands-on Energy Navigator programs that are statewide programs. And this is really trying to figure out how to do that as well. And it would be basically a second step 2 of the report that they are already doing, that they have just now hired a consultant to start to do. And the Public Service Department, by the way, stepped up and said, hey, we want to help do this. They volunteered to help do this. So the department's consultants shall build on findings from the department's comprehensive process and performance evaluation of the more than 100 publicly funded, I said 20, I meant 100, publicly funded energy programs focused on affordability, including electric and thermal energy, weatherization for customers with low income, and beneficial electrification initiatives to inform the design of a Vermont community-based home energy navigator and coaching program. The department shall consult with Energy Efficiency Vermont, the Vermont State Energy Office, the Vermont Climate Action Office, the Vermont Community Action Agencies, the Vermont Energy and Climate Action Network, Vermont Electric Utilities, community-based home energy navigator and coaching programs, and other states, including Connecticut and Massachusetts, that have experience with community-based energy programs. And this is specifically focused on residential consumers, but there's no there's no prohibition on working with private business owners. And then there's a description of the program designed guidance to residential commuters. This is on top of page 625 for those of you who are following along. 624 was what I just read, section 1 about the report. This is what the program shall include on 625. Guidance to residential consumers, advise residential consumers on accessing available grants and rebates and financing like maybe CPACE, assist residential consumers in prioritizing identified energy savings opportunities. What is the best bang for your buck? Help residential consumers connect to local contractors. This has been a really big thing, is helping people want to do something in their home, but they don't know who to get to do the work. So one of the things Energy Navigators can do is recommend who would be good people to do the work, and advise them in person and over time. So checking back with them as they're doing their projects and how to fund these. There will be an amendment from the Appropriations Committee on the funding issue. And then what are the available public and private partnerships that currently exist. They would report back with this design by March 1st of 2027 to all of the relevant committees and about how to either design a program or have a pilot program. And there is on the section 2 is the appropriations section. Again, you'll see an amendment from your Appropriations Committee. And the effective date is July 1st, 2026 for this program design of Energy Navigators. We heard from the of course, our legislative council attorney. We heard from the Addison County Climate Action folks, including a former representative, Steve Meyer. And we heard from the Energy and Climate Program Director for Vermont Natural Resources Council. We heard from the Public Service Department and their willingness to add this on to the work that they're already doing. And I would even say they were excited about it. So the committee was 5-0-0 vote, Mr. President, and we asked for the Senate's support. Thank you.
Recognize the Senator from Washington District, Senator Watson, for the report of the Committee on Appropriations.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Appropriations did take a look at this and had a few instances of amendment that all pertain to the money related to this bill. You can see on page 625, a couple of the things that the program is supposed to do is provide ongoing state funding to support the operations of this kind of program. And then 7 is use available grant funds and private partnerships. And understanding the intent of that language, modified that because as a program, it itself will not be providing ongoing state funding. So it's to provide recommendations on state funding, and then instead of using available grant funds to support the implementation, it would recommend any grant funds to implement the program. And then in addition, it does include some typical contingency funding language that so it sounds like because the Department of Public Service is engaged in a similar report that they are moving forward with, that the duty to hire a consultant to do this aspect is contingent on an appropriation that we would determine as a part of the budget process. And likewise, any grant funding to participants who are consulted along the way would also be contingent on the appropriation of funds for that purpose. So those are the 3 instances of amendment that the Senate Appropriations Committee put forward, and the voting committee on that was 7-0-0. Thank you.
The question is, shall the recommendation of amendment of the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy be amended as proposed by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you have amended the recommendation of amendment as proposed by the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy. The next question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy as amended? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy as amended. The question now is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may interrogate the Natural Resources reporter.
The reporter is interrogated.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, good project, good initiative. But my question is, I thought that there was a statewide energy efficiency organization of Efficiency Vermont, but I understand from the testimony that there's actually 100 different organizations which may be contributing to Vermont's energy efficiency. My question to the reporter is one of the goals of this effort that we're contemplating to make those 100 programs, to combine them into something which is a bit more of a management efficiency and focus for the state, Mr. President?
Thank you for that question, Mr. President. First of all, I just want to be clear, there are not 100 different agencies. There are 100 different programs. So some of those programs are embedded in the Department of Public Service, the PUC, Efficiency Vermont, Agency of Natural Resources, Department of Children's and Families, et cetera. So there's a lot of different programs. And yes, I think the answer is that the work that they're doing in a larger study is to figure out how they could be more efficient and effective ironically, how can they be more efficient with the programs about energy efficiency? And how can they help Vermonters access those programs and utilize those programs most effectively? So I do think that's the larger project that they're already undergoing at the Public Service Department. This bill doesn't deal with the bigger picture of that. This bill is specific to the Energy Navigator programs. And as I mentioned, there are a number of Energy Navigator programs. So what this bill is trying to do is say, how can we have one statewide program that's community-based so that people have people in their own community that they can turn to for Energy Navigator assistance. But that is, a consistent and cohesive Energy Navigator program statewide.
So thank you, Mr. President, and I thank the reporter. Thank you.
Question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of S-219. We have on the calendar for action S-239, introduced on January 13th of 2026. It was referred to the Committee on Government Operations, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as it appears starting on page 627 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Listen to the second reading of the bill.
S-239, an act relating to the Child Abuse and Neglect Reporting Working Group.
Recognize the Senate.
Could you say what committee it was referred to and what committee's reporting out?
That would be a point of inquiry.
Point of inquiry?
It is referred to the Committee on Health and Welfare. I recognize the senator from Chittenden, Senator Gulick, for the report of the Committee on Health and Welfare.
Mr. President, Agatha Christie once said, one of the luckiest things that can happen to you in life is to have a happy childhood. As we know, that's not always the case for children in Vermont, and there are some children who suffer from neglect and abuse. In those tragic cases, we have laws in place to help protect those children and remove them from a dangerous environment if deemed necessary. The contents of this bill were recommended by the Vermont Center for Crime Victim Services, who reached out to my Chittenden Central colleague, Senator Vyhovsky, who is a social worker with deep and relevant experience and knowledge. This strike-all amendment has come about because there are real concerns with laws, specifically around mandatory reporting, that have not been updated since the 1990s. Currently, mandatory reporting laws lack clarity. They're outdated, as I just said, and we took testimony from the lead sponsor of the bill that sometimes mandatory reporters lack a clear understanding of what the reporting rules really mean. Training requirements for mandatory reporting need to be updated so that children are not harmed and also not removed from their families when they shouldn't be. This bill acknowledges that changes to mandatory reporting, which are found in Chapter 49 of Title 33, must be done carefully and thoughtfully. So instead of recommending changes in this bill would create a working group. You will see, as you said, Mr. President, on page 629, if you'd like to follow along with the calendar, that we did make a few changes to the bill as introduced. And again, I just want to reiterate that this is forming a study group, a working group. The section 1 is the formation of the working group. We added the word mandatory, and we added 2 members of the Child Development Division, which resides in DCF, the Department of Children and Families. And we added a list of stakeholders that the group should consult with. And We set the due date for the report as January 15th of 2027. And lastly, we added language to really guide the work of this group toward minimum standards, best practices, and alignment between systems and the laws and the rules and the policies that set a course of action in place to recognize and report child abuse, and also to understand what is not child abuse. For example, poverty is not abuse, and mandatory reporters need to be able to discern the difference between the two. Section 2, we did not change, and the effective date for this bill is on passage. We heard from Legislative Counsel, we heard from Senator Vyhovsky, the sponsor of the bill, and Lindsay Barron of the Department of Children and Families Family Service Division. Your Senate Health and Welfare Committee voted 5-0-0 in favor of this bill, and we ask that the body concur. Thank you, Mr. President.
The question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Health and Welfare? Senator from Windham.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I interrogate the reporter of the bill?
The reporter is interrogated.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate this bill very much. Just recently, I heard from a constituent who works for the school district, and I would like to ask if the committee took testimony from school personnel.
We did not take testimony from school personnel, Mr. President.
Okay, thank the reporter. Oh.
Might I just add a little point of clarification? The presenter of the bill and the sponsor of the bill, who is a social worker, has worked in schools. So we did have that background to sort of add a tenor to the work that is being done. Thank you, Mr. President.
I think the reporter of the bill, I'll consult with folks who are the reporter of the bill and the sponsor of the bill, and possibly have an amendment to suggest that a representative of a school be part of the working group. Thank you.
Senator
Thank you, Mr. President. We understand that there are going to be significant number of folks in the state with interest in participating and offering information as the working group goes ahead. The key point, obviously, for school participants would be mandatory reporting, which is a really important piece of this. And there are other mandatory reporters out there who are not included in the initial list for the working group. But that doesn't mean that their voices will not be heard during the process. So we did talk about this, and we also have the Vermont Child, Youth, and Family Advocate, who works statewide and hears from folks regularly about the child abuse network and child abuse issues that we have currently, whether it's schools, churches, homes, whatever it is. And all of those folks will be heard, and I think the advocate will be helpful in identifying additional voices. Thank you, Mr. President.
Question is, shall the bill be amended as offered by the Committee on Health and Welfare? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. You've amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Health and Welfare. Now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. You've ordered third reading of 239. We have on the calendar for action, S-291, introduced on January 22, 2026. It is referred to the Committee on Government Operations, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as in here, starting on page 628 of the calendar, and and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Listen to the second reading of the bill.
S-291, an act relating to travel disclosures for legislators and certain executive officers.
Recognize the Senator from Chittenden, Senator Peabody, please report to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I think comes as no surprise, there is a record low trust in government. And it will also probably come as no surprise, given how long I have fought for increased transparency and ethics and accountability, that I put forward this bill to do just that, to take one step forward in increasing transparency. This bill is based on language that exists in other states requiring similar types of disclosures. I want to be very clear, this bill prohibits nothing. What it does require is that elected officials and certain executive officers, namely secretaries, commissioners, deputy secretaries, and deputy commissioners, report publicly when an entity other than the state of Vermont or the United States government has paid for them to travel because of their role. This might be an instance when a nonprofit or another government has paid for that person to travel simply because of their role as an elected official or that small list of executive officers. It is my view that for trust and transparency, that type of travel should be reported and available for the public to know who is paying for the people to make those travel plans. It will not require that anyone report their personal vacations or their travel to visit family or friends, only instances where they are going simply because of their role as an elected official or a secretary, commissioner, deputy secretary, or deputy commissioner. The reporting is outlined in the bill. One of the changes your Government Operations Committee made was to allow the executive officers to use their already existing reporting tools, simply making those public. If this requires that elected officials would make those reports to the Ethics Commission. But for the executive officers, we heard that under one of their bulletins, they're already reporting this. It's simply not publicly available. So it does allow them to not be duplicative and make them file 2 reports to use their existing system. The other addition to the bill is actually some small tweaks and clarifications to language around the Ethics Commission. And these tweaks and changes came directly from the Ethics Commission. They thought it would make their work easier and their task clearer to the public. And that is what the bill does. It is based, as I said, on language that already exists, I believe, in Massachusetts and Connecticut and other states. But those are the 2 states we sort of based the language on. And in my view, this is one step forward in building transparency and trust in state government. Your vote in the and I think I left my witness list in committee, so I apologize for that, but your vote in committee was 5-0-0, and I will happily bring the witness list and share it with you all on 3rd reading.
Question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations? Are you ready for that question? Senator from Chittenden Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I interrogate the reporter of the bill?
Reporter will be interrogated.
Mr. President, both the senator from Chittenden Central and I sit on the ethics panel for the Senate, where we've had many meaningful discussions about when someone in the legislature is operating within their legislative duties and functions, and when they are considered not operating within their legislative duties and functions. So I would imagine that the reporter of the bill has some knowledge of what I might be asking when I ask if there's the possibility that a travel disclosure could be filed with the Ethics Commission, but a complaint comes to the Senate Ethics Panel.
I think that would absolutely happen. That if there was a complaint, just as it does now, it would come to the ethics panel. It might also go to the Ethics Commission, but as we know, we haven't really funded them to be able to do the work that we've tasked them to do, so we end up doing a lot of that in the Ethics Panel.
Mr. President, I thank my colleague, and I may want to discuss this further with the committee for clarification by third reading.
Thank you, Senator. Question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations? Are you ready for that question? Senator from
Mr.
Rutland.
President, if I may interrogate the reporter of the bill.
Reporter will be interrogated.
So again, this kind of moved through this pretty quick. This is a new topic, so I'm just curious. So I understand that these reports get given to the State Ethics Commission. I'm looking for confirmation of that.
Yes.
From the reporter. Thank you, Mr. President. Who retains these reports? Where are they posted? If I could inquire, Mr. President.
The Ethics Commission would retain them and post them and make them available for public viewing.
All good. Thank you, Mr. President. And then it was kind of quickly passed through, and I couldn't quite find it in the language of the bill on the sponsorship. I heard foreign governments, I think I heard organizations of one type or another. If the reporter could at least articulate what's being reported. Obviously now we know to whom, but that would be helpful. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, so the exemptions to filing a report are if the state government or US government were to pay for the travel. So if the Vermont State Senate said, we want you to go do this and we paid for it, you do not have to make a report, though you can. We did make a change in the bill as it was originally drafted. It actually prohibited you making a report in those instances, but we did change that. So you're able to, but do not have to. The things that need to be reported are what the travel was for, who paid for it, what was paid, and what was paid for, unless it's of a de minimis value. And we had de minimis value, meaning a value of $50 or less per source per occasion. Or a value, an individual item received from any one source shall not exceed $150 in a calendar year. So that would be the aggregate de minimis amount. And this was really meant to capture, maybe I have gone to an event and I'm speaking and I'm running late to get somewhere and a taxi is ordered. We don't feel like that necessarily needed to be reported. So we did add the de minimis exemption, but really what is being reported if it's not being paid for, like I said, by the state or US government, is where you went, why you were there, and what was paid for, and by whom.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. President. And that all seems reasonable. So in the event that a foreign government pays for travel, that this would be a reportable occasion?
Yes.
Mr. President. Thank you. And then also, in addition to foreign governments, any organization, whether it's U.S.-based or foreign-based, that provides under the kind of boundaries that the reporter provided, non-governmental organizations, nonprofit or otherwise, would also be reported upon the passage of this bill. Would that be correct, Mr. President?
Yes, if it is not the state of Vermont or the US government paying for the travel, it would be reportable. Again, it is not prohibited. It is simply reportable and available to the public.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the reporter.
Senator from Addison.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I inquire of the reporter, please?
You may. The senator will be interrogated.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the top of 6:30, and I think I know the answer to this question, but I just want to make sure because of what you just said a couple times. If it's paid for by the state or the federal government or the member themselves, correct?
That is correct,
Okay,
yes.
so if someone decides they want to go on a trip to a foreign place, to Europe or whatever, and they pay for it themselves, and then they get there and say, I'm the senator from Vermont and blah, 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 that's not reportable if they've paid for it themselves. They don't have to report. They could if they wanted to.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I interrogate the
Reporter will be interrogated.
Mr. President, I don't know that many of us get to go on things done by foreign governments. I've never heard of anything from the U.S. government that comes through here, but many of us attend conferences sponsored by the National Conference of State Legislators, insurance legislators, the Conference of State Government, and they generally offer scholarships, sponsoring, somewhere around 1,000, 1,500 to cover travel. Every time somebody in this body does that, we are going to have to make a report to the State Ethics Commission. Is that what that bill would require?
Yes, that is the intent of the bill.
That could be tens to hundreds of reports a year. Has anybody looked at the workload, and if that, how would you report? I mean, is there a form? Where would I find the form? Can I fill it out online and put forward, or am I going to have to address something? How would this work?
The State Ethics Commission is tasked in the bill to design the form and ensure that people have access to the form.
And has the State Ethics Commission, Mr. President, confirmed that they can handle the workload of looking at and approve? Do they have to approve the form?
The form does not need to be approved. It needs to be filed, and I worked with the State Ethics Commission to develop the language of this bill. If they had concerns, I imagine they would have shared them.
Okay, and this would be public record?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator from Windsor.
Mr. President, I just rise in support of this bill as someone who has gotten the privilege and honor of traveling to Taiwan, Denmark, and Abu Dhabi recently, all through programs associated with supporting different issues that I care about as a senator. At each one of those travel trips, I got a form afterwards saying, what are the requirements of your state for travel disclosure? And I said none. Because we don't currently have any requirement. But I think it's important that our constituents know if we're having a paid trip by a foreign government. I think that's important. And for me, I publicly share often when I do those trips so that my constituents know. But if I didn't, and then I took a vote on, let's say, the Taiwanese Friendship Resolution, and I gave a speech, that would be, you'd want to connect the dots. Where did I get and develop an interest in Taiwanese government? Was it just because I naturally care about that country? Or was it because I've created friendships and relationships with folks who are on the island? So I do think this is an important bill, although would require disclosure on our parts. It would take, 5-10 minutes each time I get to travel through a paid program. And I would just offer, as the NCSL coordinator for the Vermont Senate Chamber, I'm very willing to work with folks to, when this bill becomes implemented, to work with our partners at different conferences so we can get clear information. They already do this for actually the majority of other states that they offer these kinds of scholarships to. So thank you.
Question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations. Question now is, shall the bill be read the third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. The ayes have it, and you have ordered third reading of S-291. We will move back to S-206 at this point, which we passed over earlier. And it was referred to the Committee on Health and Welfare, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as set forth in today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Affecting revenues of the state, the bill was referred to the Committee on Finance, which reports that the bill ought to pass when amended as recommended by the Committee on Finance. And affecting the appropriations of the state, the bill was then referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which reports that it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S-206, an act relating to licensure of early childhood educators by the Office of Professional Regulation.
I'd like to recognize the senator from Chittenden Central for the report of the Committee on Health and Welfare.
Thank you, Mr. President. S-206 is an act relating to licensure of early childhood educators by the Office of Professional Regulation. We all have experience being a child. We all have childhoods. And we often feel as though, because of our lived experience, because of our personal observations and anecdotes, that we have a certain level of expertise in the area of early childhood education. And I also think we are all often conflicted between wanting to use those personal experiences to draft and create policy, but also being guided by data and evidence and research. So with that, I want to really send some praise to the colleagues, our colleagues and folks who work in and around our state government and provide us with such incredible data, research, and evidence to make our decisions. And the Early Childhood Education Sunrise Review Assessment from the Office of Professional Regulation is just an incredible document. I've spent quite a bit of time with it now. It looks really daunting. It's not that bad. Half of it is, frankly, citation. It's so well cited that there are just a lot of footnotes in here. So anyone who feels that they want to increase their knowledge of early education, early childhood education, this is a fabulous document. I highly recommend it. So I'm going to start with a little bit of background and history, and then I'll get to the bill a little bit later. You may know that OPR, the Office of Professional Regulation, only regulates professions when there is a risk of harm. And when they do so at the most minimally invasive way that they can. That could be registration, it could be certification, or it could be licensure. In early childhood education, harm can happen. That is why this has come to the Office of Professional Regulation. In May of 2024, seeing some deficiencies and some areas for growth in our early childhood landscape, the Vermont Association for the Education of Young Children submitted to the Vermont Office of Professional Regulation, OPR, an application for preliminary Sunrise Review Assessment, recognizing early childhood education as a licensed profession in Vermont. The application triggered an OPR regulatory review to assess whether Vermont should regulate early childhood education as a standalone profession. OPR concluded that early childhood education in non-public settings, so I want to be clear that everything we're discussing today is the non-public setting, so not the pre-K that we see in public schools that is overseen by the Agency of Education. This is something else. So, so they looked at non-public settings. Should they be a regulated profession in Vermont? A uniform regulatory system of early childhood educators in a non-public setting would ensure public protections by, 1, improving the quality of care, 2, reducing harms to children, and 3, establishing a streamlined preparation pathway for early educators. So those are the 3 main things that we're going to be looking at. But you might be asking, well, what problem are we trying to solve? We always like to look at that question when we talk about policy. So let's do a little bit of table setting, if you could humor me a little bit. On page 27 of the Sunrise Review, which I know you don't all have a copy of, but there's a great section that talks about the importance of early education and all that's going on in our brains when we are 1 year old or 2 or 3 or 4. And I can tell you, as someone who was put in a French kindergarten at the age of 5, I was fluent in two months. So if that doesn't show you what's happening in a child's brain, I don't know what does, because learning a language at 60 is a whole different ballgame. So anyway, in that section, there's a lot of great reporting on the importance of early childhood education to brain development, to setting the neural pathways for success. And if I may, Mr. President, I'd love to read something from the.
Without objection.
Thank you. So I'm just going to read you on pages 29 and 30, something that I think is important, because we want to, again, be grounded in evidence. So the long-term positive impacts of children participating in high-quality early education include better physical health, increased higher education, higher earnings, and lower involvement in crime. 2 separate research projects that began in the 1970s compared the impacts of early care and education between 2 similarly situated groups of children. One group having access to comprehensive developmental resources, and the other having access to lower quality early care. In both studies, data was collected about participants yearly until the age of 8, and included analysis of cognitive and socioeconomic skills. Socio-emotional, social-emotional skills, not economic. Participants continued to provide data at age 12, age 15, 21, 30, and 35 years of age. So it's really a longitudinal study. The data gathered in these studies demonstrated that children who received access to high-quality developmental resources, including early learning, had significantly better health, education, incomes, and life outcomes than those who without care or with lower quality care. This was evident even when that child grew to be a 35-year-old adult. Another research project showed that children from low-income populations who, before the age of 5, received 2 years or more of high-quality early childhood education had higher salaries in their mid-20s and were more likely to graduate from college. So again, just highlighting the importance of this time of our lives. And in terms of finances, $1 invested in early childhood education yields a savings of anywhere from $4 to $16. Or I should say, yields a return of $4 to $16. The investments that we've already made in Vermont through Act 166, Act 58, Act 45, and Act 76 have been incredibly important. First of all, they laid bare the issues that we have in Vermont, and they also gave us tools to begin the work of improvement. This is one of those tools. So the problems that we're trying to solve with this bill are reducing harm that could have lasting effects and improve the lack of transparency and the individual accountability that currently exists in Vermont. Currently, CDD investigates claims. If there's a complaint, they would investigate the claim and they would go through a process. But the process really focuses on the facility and the individual. So currently, if there's an issue with an individual in a child care setting, they can move on. And there's nothing to let the parent of a child know that there's been an issue with that individual. A person who caused harm can move, and this bill would allow OPR to investigate individuals and, if need be, suspend a license. everyone working currently in early childhood education does have to follow a certain amount of requirements, but they don't have the benefit of licensure. And they don't have the benefit of a robust, organized continuum of learning and improvement. You may remember this bill from last year. I know a lot of us were scratching our heads when we saw this come up because we remembered voting on it last year. We did. It was part of a larger OPR bill. That OPR bill did pass successfully out of the Senate. It went to the House. And what happened was they ran out of time to take robust testimony on this section of the OPR bill. So it ended up getting taken out. So that is why it may seem familiar. So let's go through the committee report, which you can find on, I want to make sure I get my page right. 615, I hear my chair whispering. Thank you. 615 of the calendar. And let's see. So just to recap before I go into the bones of the bill, this committee report creates a new license requirement for early childhood educators working in a program regulated by CDD that is not located in a public school, which is different from the existing license required for the operation of a child care program. It establishes a board of early childhood educators to oversee the profession in collaboration with the Office of Professional Regulation. And the committee report proposes eligibility requirements and a fee structure for several license types and creates 2 opportunities for variances from the eligibility requirements, which I know is an important piece for many of you. It further creates 2 new positions to establish the licensure program and makes corresponding appropriations. So section 1, if you're following along, sets us in 3 VSA chapter 122, and that is the OPR statute. And it is effective, it will be effective on the 1st of July 2026. It adds early childhood educators to the list of professions regulated by OPR. Section 2, which we're now in 16 VSA, which is the Professions and Occupation Statute, Chapter 111. This will be effective on July 1st of 2026. This establishes a new chapter specific to the regulation of early childhood educators in Title 26. You will see that Chapter 6211 is the creation of the board. 6212 are the board procedures. Chapter 6213 are the powers and the duties of the board. And then we move to section 3, which will amend 26 VSA chapter 111. And you'll see that the date for this is further out. This is July 1st of 2028. It's actually going to amend that earlier section. And this section adds to previously created licensure, to the previously created licensure chapter that we just talked about. And it adds, in chapter 6201, it adds definitions. And I'll go through these with you because I know a lot of folks are curious about this. It adds numerous definitions, including the most significantly ECE 1, so Early Childhood Educator 1. This is an individual practicing as an assistant educator under the supervision of an ECE 2, an ECE 3, or a teacher licensed by the AOE, so an early childhood educator in a public setting, with an endorsement in early childhood education, early childhood special education, or elementary education. The next category or level is ECE 2. This is an individual practicing as a lead or a primary educator who can supervise an ECE1 and can also receive guidance from an ECE3. An ECE3, Early Childhood Educator 3, this is an individual practicing as a lead or primary educator who can supervise an ECE1 and also provide guidance to an ECE2. FCCP is the family child care provider. So this is someone who takes care of children in a home environment, and those childhood family providers are able to take care of, they could be taking care of 6 kids, but only from 2 families. So it's a 2-family limit on the family child care provider, but not 2 children, 2 families. This is an individual providing developmentally appropriate care, education, protection, and supervision to children from birth through age 8, and who is authorized by CDD to operate a family child care home. So those are the definitions that we're putting in place in 26 VSA. The next chapter, 6202, these are the prohibitions. And I'm gonna read these as well. So individuals cannot hold themselves out as an early childhood educator unless they are licensed or if they're exempt from the chapter. Individuals cannot use, in connection with the individual's name, any letters, words, or insignia indicating that they are an early childhood educator unless they are licensed or exempt from the chapter. And in chapter 6203, we've got exemptions. So this chapter does not apply to a teacher who's licensed by the AOE with an endorsement in early childhood education, early childhood special education, or elementary education. This chapter does not apply to individuals providing after-school care at a CDD-regulated program or any child care program exempt from CDD regulation. This chapter does not change the universal pre-K requirements, and those are the ones that you find in schools. This chapter does not limit or restrict the right of a practitioner or another profession from carrying on in the usual manner any functions incidental to the profession. So I don't know, for some reason, the scenario that came to mind last night is if you're a dog walker and you happen to bring a couple kids along on a walk with you, this chapter does not interfere with that at all. I don't know why that example came to mind. Chapter 6221, eligibility and qualifications. Those are set forward here. I'm happy to go through those quickly. The applicants must be at least 18 years of age. They have to have a high school diploma or a GED and completed required early education field experience. Applicants must meet the following educational requirements by type. So ECE1, they will be required to have a certificate from an approved credential program in early childhood education requiring a minimum of 120 hours of training and instruction. And that approved credential program will be set in rule. So it may not be spelled out here, but in rule that will be worked out. ECE2, that is an associate's degree in early childhood education or related field requiring a minimum of 60 college credits, or in any unrelated field at a minimum of 21 college credits in the core early childhood education competency areas. ECE3, we're looking at a bachelor's degree in early childhood education or a related field requiring a minimum of 120 college credits or in any unrelated field and a minimum of 21 college credits in the core early childhood education competency areas. And then the family child care provider qualified for licensure if authorized to operate a family child care home by CDD and the family child care home is in good standing. And these applications will no longer be accepted after January 1st of 2029. We're really trying to get everyone to the same level of excellence, and we're really trying to provide uniformity in terms of the quality of care across the state. Approved educational program may offer college credits based on individuals' assessed competencies acquired through experience, and the applicants must pass an exam if required by the board. So Chapter 6222 is the license renewal section, and you will see that licenses renewed every 2 years upon application and payment of fee. So every 2 years, the licenses will be required to be renewed, and there will be a payment of the fee. The fees will be really important because they will obviously help pay for the program and drive the program forward. Failure to comply will result in suspension and a lapsed license. Lapsed licenses are reinstated upon payment of biennial renewal fees and the late renewal penalty. Except a lapsed family child care provider shall not be renewed after lapsing or 2 or more years. The board may adopt rules to ensure that the applicant whose license lapses for more than 5 years is professionally qualified before reinstatement may occur. So that, again, is something that will be fleshed out in rules. It's not in the current bill. And applicants for renewal must complete continued education if required. Chapter 6223 are the fees. Those will be taken up a little bit later by my colleague in the Senate Finance. And Chapter 6224, this is the section on unprofessional conduct. And unprofessional conduct means conduct that's prohibited by 3 VSA Chapter 129A or other statutes related to early childhood education, conduct resulting in being placed on the Child Protection Registry, and conduct that does not conform to the NAEYC professional standards and competencies. Chapter 6225, these are the variances. Again, I think this is an important section for folks. In the variance section, the board is authorized to issue a transitional ECE2 or ECE3 license to a teacher or a program director who does not meet licensure requirements for up to 8 years while the individual works toward the licensure requirements. So we're talking about 2036. It authorizes the board to issue a variance for an ECE2 for up to 8 years if the individual has completed 21 college credits in core early childhood education competencies or has prior experiential learning deemed equivalent to 21 college credits in core early childhood education competency. Chapter 6226, this is the disclosure by licenses, so requires licensed early childhood educators to post and provide information to families on the different types of licenses, the descriptions, and I'll read those for you. So all OPR license types, a description of OPR's authority over licensees in CDC regulated programs and how to make complaints, a description of AOE's authority over teachers providing pre-K services under 16 BSA Chapter 829, that is the education statutes, 16 BSA, and a description of CDD's authority over regulated programs. So obviously part of this bill is also making sure that parents are educated, families are educated, and they know what kind of care their children will be receiving. Section 4, this is a repeal section. It'll take effect on July 1st of 28, and it repeals the variances that we talked about in 26 VSA Chapter 6225 on July 1st, 2036. Section 5 is a report. This is early childhood licensure effective on July 1st of 2026. And it requires OPR to submit a report to the General Assembly by November 1st of 2031 pertaining to the implementation of the licensure program, including, and this report is important because any questions that we may have today or some issues that we might have will be, the hope is, fleshed out and really honed in that report that will be coming out in 2031. So what's going to be in that report pertaining to implementation of the licensure program? We're going to find out the number of licenses by the different types. We're going to find out the state resources that were used to implement the chapter. We're going to find out the number and the nature of any complaints or enforcement actions, the qualification required for each license type, and other issues that OPR might deem appropriate. In Section 6, you've got the Office of Professional Regulation, the licensure of early childhood educators, in programs related and regulated by the CDD. You've got your appropriations and positions. This is all effective July 1st of 2026. And I really appreciate OPR worked with us on this section. Initially, there were 3 permanent positions, and they changed that to 2 permanent positions that would be arriving in OPR in FY27. And that would be a full-time classified executive officer for the Board of Early Childhood Educators and a full-time staff attorney. And I also appreciate that they worked with us on the appropriations, and it appropriates $262,000 of general fund money in FY27 to OPR for the licensure of early childhood educators. And the effective dates, Section 7. Sections 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7 take effect on July 1st of 2026. And sections 3 and 4 take effect on July 1st of 2026. Okay, let's see. Where are we? So I just want to say before I go over the witness list and the vote that it took me a while to get to yes on this bill, I'll be honest with you. I'm someone who really believes that government is at its best when it creates robust institutions that take care of folks, take care of people. You know, I wish that all of our education sort of resided in our public institution, public education. That being said, we have a mixed delivery system for early childhood education, and it seems to serve especially families in rural areas quite well. And that includes the home care settings. But I did get to yes. I was moved by the evidence and the data and the research that was provided, and by the just incredible testimony that we got. So with that, let me see if I can find my long list of witnesses, and I will share that with you. Bear with me while I find that list. I'd like to think I'm really organized, but, and it is in here somewhere. While I'm looking, I can tell you that the vote in committee was 5-0-0. Here we go. Okay, so we heard from Shannon Edmonds Folsom of J Peak Resort, who was just very enthusiastic about this bill. We heard from Danielle Harris, the Senior Director of Youth Development at the YMCA. We heard from Allie Richards and Emily Tannenbaum of Let's Grow Kids. We heard from Lauren Hibbert, the Deputy Secretary at the Secretary of State's office, and Jen Collin, shout out, who spent a lot of time on this incredible report. She's the Director of the Office of Professional Regulation at the Secretary of State's office. We heard from Morgan Crossman and Anna Bouillet of Building Bright Futures. We heard from Susan Titterton and Sharon Harrington of the Vermont Association for the Education of Young Children. We heard from Joanna DeGraffenreid, the Public Policy Manager of Vermont Businesses for Social Responsibility. The business community is aware of how important this is. We heard from Megan Mescat, the Director of Early Childhood Education of the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union. Jen Olson, the Director of the Quarry Hill School. Caitlin Northey, the Associate Professor of Early Childhood Education at the University of Vermont. Janet McLaughlin, who is the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Children and Families. Andrew Proughton, the Assistant Director of the Educator Quality Division of the Agency of Education. Leslie Johnson, an Associate Academic Dean of the Community College of Vermont. And again, the vote was 5-0-0 in committee. We ask that the body concur. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. I'd like to recognize the Senator from Madison District, Senator Hardy, for the report of the Committee on Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. You will find the fee section of this bill at the very bottom of page 620 of the calendar, section 6223, and then the fees themselves on page 621. Your Finance Committee are like bloodhounds with bills when we're looking for fees. The first thing we ask when we get a bill from another committee is, where are the fees? And go through them sniffing for fees. This one was a little easier to find because the fees are laid out in their own private little section. But we also have the Joint Fiscal Office report on the fees. They're pretty straightforward. For the initial application for the ECE 1, the Early Childhood Educator 1, 2, and 3, they're $125, $175, and $225 respectively, that's the right word. And then the renewal, $225, $250, and $275 respectively. For family child care providers, initial fee of $175 and a biennial renewal fee of $250. I know from past experience with OPR fees that the initial fee is usually cheaper because it's helping get somebody into a field. But then once they're established in the field, the renewal fee is a little bit more expensive to be able to maintain their position in the field or move up in their licensure status. These fees, as you know, from all bills that we get from the Office of Professional Regulation and frankly from other places, fees are meant to cover the cost of the program, and in this case, cover the cost of OPR regulating early childhood educators. So starting, they would start to collect the fees in FY28. The revenue would not be available till FY29. So there is an appropriation, which your Appropriations Committee will talk about. But then starting in FY29, the fee revenue would be available. It would generate approximately $800,000 in fiscal year 2029 based on the estimates of OPR, and then approximately $1.2 million biannually after that. It would be deposited in the OPR Regulatory Fee Fund, and then that would be remain to regulate the profession. So the total fees estimated over the years are about $800,000, and then in FY31 and every odd year after that, because they're 2-year biennial renewals, would be about $1.2 million. So your Committee on Finance took a look at these fees and heard from the Office of Professional Regulation and the Joint Fiscal Office and the reporter of the bill, who also happens to be a member of the Finance Committee. And we voted on a vote of 4-3 to approve the bill and ask that it move forward. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. I'd like to recognize the senator from Chittenden Southeast, Senator Lyons, for the report of the Committee on Appropriations.
Thank you, Mr. President. As is usual for the Senate Appropriations Committee, we have removed the $262,000 from the bill as proposed, and understanding that an appropriation for the 2027 fiscal year would be needed in order for the hiring of the 2 staff positions, the staff attorney and the executive officer for the board, for the program to begin. So, and as the senator from Addison has indicated, we need startup money to begin a new program, and the $262,000, should it become available, would allow for that to occur. And then following that, fees collected would support the program in the future. Your Committee on Appropriations voted 7-0-0 with the language that's included on page 624. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator.
So point of information.
Senator.
Related to S-206. I probably heard the term educator 100 times in the report, and I recognize the intent.
Senator, if I might, we are on the question of shall we amend as proposed by the Committee on Appropriations. Is your...
I'll pause. Thank you.
Thank you. So the question, as I just said, is shall the recommendation of the amendment of the Committee on Health and Welfare be amended as proposed by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Appropriations. Next question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Health and Welfare as amended? Senator from Rutland.
If it's appropriate, Mr. President, I still would like to ask this point of information related to S-206. Again, in the report, we heard the term educator over 100 times, or at least somewhere in that ballpark. And I'm curious why this bill was never referred, at least shared with the Senate Committee on Education in the process of being reviewed, being that the quality of child education is at the heart of this particular bill. Thank you.
If I might take... Thank you, Senator. If I might ask the senator from Rutland. The Senate Secretary confirms my understanding of the process, which is bills go to one committee, and then if they affect the revenues of the state or the appropriations of the state, they would go to a money committee, but it would take an additional motion for someone to move it to another policy committee other than that first recipient.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the response.
Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I interrogate the reporter of the bill?
Senator will be interrogated.
So the senator, the reporter and I went through this process of Health and Welfare and Education committees a couple of years ago, and we took a lot of testimony. We ended up passing the bill, which provided for funding for additional childcare seats. And I have a couple of questions about whether there's enough data to actually prove that this bill is going to help to increase the seats. For example, can we point to any data showing that professional licensure increases the number of available childcare seats?
I want to make sure I'm not misspeaking. There is evidence in other professions that licensure increases folks' willingness or desire to become part of that profession. It tends to elevate status. It tends to add clarity to the job, and it tends to be valued by our society. So it does, yes, there is evidence that having licensure will increase uptake.
So what analysis has been conducted on how these licensure requirements will impact small home-based providers, if any?
The thrust of this bill is to ensure, as we're doing in other areas of education, to try to ensure equity and quality across the state. So we heard from a lot of home care professionals, some of which I quoted in my witness list, who are really excited about this possibility, this licensure, this future of licensure. Obviously, there are always folks who don't want change and don't agree with the change. So it's hard to know exactly what the outcome will be. But again, the goal of this is that we will be increasing quality and we will be increasing access across the state of Vermont, including in rural areas. And the hope is that those folks who are running home education programs will get their ECE2 or their ECE3 license so that they will be part of that professional family in the state of Vermont. I hope that answers the question, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. It actually doesn't, because, we've thrown a lot of money at this daycare issue with very limited success. We have increased the number of seats, we've increased the number of daycare facilities, but my concern is that given the documented decline in home-based care, rural Vermont, how does this bill prevent further loss in that sector? I've had, just last weekend, I had 2 calls from constituents with issues about regulation and increased requirements put upon them, including fees, that probably going to put them out of business. So I'm just concerned whether we have the data that proves that licensure and the additional funding that we're going to spend for the fees is going to increase the number of seats and daycare facilities, which we desperately need.
Do you have a question, Senator, or?
Just Mr. President, if we have any data that proves to the contrary.
Mr. President, I will certainly, I apologize if I don't feel like I have specific data to that question at my fingertips. I'm happy to provide it at third reading, but if I may, I would just like to reiterate the importance, especially in this moment, of improving the quality of childcare that we have in the state of Vermont. And there is a lot of evidence that quality of childhood education is incredibly important. It does make a difference. And from where I sit, it's not fair that some kids in the state are getting high quality early childhood education and others might not be. So the goal of this bill is to make sure that every child in the state of Vermont is provided with excellent early childhood education. And that is what we are trying to achieve here. I recently met with a constituent who works for a nonprofit called Vermont Kin as Parents, and they work with kids who are either in foster care or looking to be fostered. They're in the system. They've suffered from abuse or neglect. And one of the things he said to me is, it's so important that we have knowledgeable, well-trained educators, because it's not just teaching reading and writing and numbers anymore. It's being trauma-informed. More and more of our children are coming to us with trauma, And unless you know how to recognize trauma and how to respond to it appropriately, you could be doing harm and damage to kids. That's what we're trying to fix here, and that's critically important. So I will leave it at that. I will certainly try to provide specific data for the senator on third reading if that would be suitable for him.
I thank the reporter, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator.
And I support early childhood education workforce, but the data shows that I've seen, our problem is not licensure, it's access. Programs are not operating at full capacity due to staffing shortages. We've lost a significant number of home-based providers. Before adding new requirements and fees, we need to be sure we're increasing seats, not reducing them. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Madison.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to underscore a point that the senator from Chittenden, the reporter of the bill, is making. And I just want to tell a little bit of a story about my experience with the Office of Professional Regulation. Early in my tenure here at the legislature, I introduced a bill to require licensure of massage therapists. And I did it because of an experience in my district with a massage therapist who created harm against a significant number of my constituents. And OPR at that time was not in favor of regulation. And I tell this story with the former director of OPR in the chamber right now. And they came back and I said, I know that this is a possibility. It happened to 70 of my constituents. And they came back saying we need to do what's called a sunrise review. And a sunrise review is a review that OPR does to determine whether or not they should regulate a profession. The reporter of the bill talked about this, but I think it's really worth underscoring because part of that sunrise review determines whether or not regulation can prevent harm. Harm of people who are receiving services from a profession. And in the case of massage therapists, it was about sexual harm that some people in my district had received because of a massage therapist. And ultimately, their sunrise review stated that they should license that profession and regulate that profession, and they have done so, and it has been really, really effective. And one of the things in the Sunrise Review for early childhood educators was also that without regulating the profession, there is the possibility of harm. And who would that harm be to, Mr. President? That harm would be to the youngest Vermonters, the babies, the toddlers, the young children who are going to early childhood education programs throughout our state. And this is not to say that early childhood educators abuse children, because the vast, vast majority, many of whom are in this chamber, are amazing, amazing people and amazing teachers and educators and care deeply for children in Vermont. But there are occasions when harm can be done. And if a profession is not regulated correctly, is not regulated sufficiently, and not regulated by the appropriate regulator, which in this case, I do think is the Office of Professional Regulation because they are really experienced with regulating professions across the state. If the regulation isn't done in an effective way, there can be harm done, and that harm would be done to the children of Vermont. So the point of regulation is not to create more slots in our child care system. The point of regulation is to make sure that the slots that are available are safely regulated, that they have appropriate educators in the room doing the right things, and that they have the criteria, the credentials, the education, and the oversight necessary to care for children, to educate children, and to provide high quality, excellent childcare, which is across the board proven to be effective and effective in educating and caring for children, and cost effective to all of us Vermonters, cost effective to the residents of Vermont, the taxpayers of Vermont, to the parents of Vermont, to make sure that their kids get the high quality care they deserve. That's what happens, Mr. President, when we have a well-regulated profession. And the reporter of the bill is absolutely right. people want to work in a well-regulated profession. It makes them feel that they have the status, the protections for themselves as educators, and are more likely to go into the field of early childhood education, more likely to get the respect and the compensation they deserve, and more likely to open their own childcare centers across the state, including home-based care providers and center-based care providers. So, Mr. President, regulating childcare is an important step in protecting our children from harm, creating a safe and effective system for early childhood education, and producing more early childhood educators that lead to more slots in our system to care for our children. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Madison.
Mr. President, could I ask for a brief recess to talk with, speak with?
We'll take a brief recess.
For the early.
Will the Senate please come to order? The junior senator from Addison, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion to move this bill into the Education Committee for further review.
Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would say across the board, generally speaking, I oppose moving bills off the floor when they are ready for action. In this case, we've been through 3 different committees and 2 different years. The Senate already voted a version of this bill out last year. It doesn't seem to me that the senator's request to recommit comes out of necessity. So with that said, Mr. President, I would hope that the body would continue our action on this bill. Through unavoidable reasons, we're a little detained today, so we're running a little late. So I'll hope for this vote to be voted down, and then we can continue to our final business and final vote.
Senator from Franklin.
Mr. President, this is a bill about education, and it's about childhood education and early childhood education. It's a bill based on what I've heard so far. There are questions that should have been asked that haven't been asked. We haven't seen the other side of the picture. You know, if you recall, if the chamber will recall, we looked at issues like this when we talked about the professionalization of early childhood childcare, which became and morphed into childhood education. And even at that time and since, there have been a number of studies that have said that as defined right now and as early education is being used, it has some problems. We heard about the studies that say that early childhood education does a great job for the 3 and 4-year-olds. But there's a lot of data out there. There are a number of studies out there that say the end result of that is after 2 or 3 or 4 years after that early education, that there's a reversion in many, many cases to the same place they would have been had they not had that early education in the first place. There's still debate on this. And I gather from the testimony that's been presented to the regulatory body, in this case, the Secretary of State's office, may not have reflected all of that. I think this is an education issue, and it's the first step. And it could be an extremely costly step. We just see now the creation of various categories of people who will be employees who have certain certifications by the state. We also see now we've created a board to manage and oversee that. And that board now has a lawyer attached to it. You know what that typically means. And I see here a monster being created that has not been looked at thoroughly and hasn't been looked at thoroughly by the one organization in this chamber that's responsible for education. And I think that's a mistake. That's a grave mistake. We should get the facts. We should make decisions on the basis of competent evidence, and we should look at the entirety of the picture, not one-sided, a one-sided part of the picture. And I strongly believe that the motion made by the senator from Addison is an appropriate measure, that it should go to the committee that is responsible for education, and that we should have a thorough review of what this entails, and also what this means to Vermont in the long term in terms of creating professions that are involved in education, that are the key to what gets delivered to our school system. And that, well, where we are right now, we're not there. And we should not be voting on the bill without it having the opportunity to be looked at thoroughly by the Education Committee, the responsible committee. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question?
Roll call.
Roll call has been requested, and when the vote is taken, it shall be by roll. Senator from Chittenden.
2 points of inquiry, Mr. President. Does this motion require a simple majority of senators present?
Yes.
And second question, my understanding of crossover is bills that aren't out of the policy committees by that date would then need special dispensation from the other chamber to be considered this legislative session. If this goes back to Senate Education, would that then basically reset the fact that they had met crossover and then require that special dispensation?
If it goes back to committee, when it comes out, it will go to our Rules Committee, and they will decide whether it moves on or whether it is parked.
Clarification, Mr. President, our Rules Committee, but would the Senate, would the House chamber, when they receive it, also have to consider whether or not?
We have no control over the other body. That said, as you've been here for a while, you may have seen several bills that didn't meet crossover that went this way and several that went that way. And it's all a matter of who wants to get stuff done at that point.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to vote against this motion because I think I want the conversation to continue, but I trust the House chamber that we don't have any control over to take up the concerns that have been raised today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the bill be committed to education as offered by the senator from Addison? Are you ready for the question? If so, the secretary shall call the roll.
Senator Baru? No. Senator Beck?
Yes.
Senator Benson?
No.
Senator Bongo?
No.
Senator Brennan?
Yes.
Senator Brock?
Yes.
Senator Chittenden?
No.
Senator Clarkson? Senator Cullimore?
No.
Senator Cummings?
No.
Senator Gulick?
No.
Senator Hardy?
No.
Senator Harrison?
No.
Senator Hashim?
No.
Senator Heffernan?
Yay.
Senator Engel?
Yes.
Senator Lyons?
No.
Senator Major?
No.
Senator Matos?
Yes.
Senator Morley?
No.
Senator Norris?
Yes.
Senator Pershman?
No.
Senator Plunkett?
No.
Senator Ron Hinsdale?
No.
Senator Bohofsky? Senator Watson?
No.
Senator Weeks?
Yes.
Senator Westman?
No.
Senator White?
No.
Senator Williams?
Yes.
Senator Clarkson? Senator Bohofsky?
Those voting yes, 9. Those voting no, 19, and the motion fails. The question is, shall the bill be amended as offered as recommended by the Committee on Health and Welfare as amended? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Addison.
Yes, Mr. President. One thing that bothered me a lot about this bill was that the actual parents were not brought in to be asked what their beliefs were, just the professionals, which I think that's a problem, that we work for Vermonters and we should hear from Vermont parents. That's all I'd like to say.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Bennington.
Mr. President, I have concerns about this bill because I'm worried, while on the one hand, I'm very supportive of early childhood education, our child care centers, the work they do. I've served on the board of one of them. My wife and I give to them every year. I'm actually supportive of what this bill on one level is seeking to do. And I know that all my senators are in favor of this, and I want to be supportive of them, but I'm really worried about child care slots. And I'm really worried about the language especially that doesn't allow home daycares to continue or to be licensed after 29. And while I'm even willing to think about how we can professionalize that part of the system as well, when one person on the floor today said it's not about the number of slots. Well, it actually is about the number of slots because people need to work and they need to have a place that's safe and where their children will be well cared for. And while it would be great in my view if everything were at this level that we're seeking to attain, there's parts of the state where that's not going to happen. And what I'm worried about is that I would rather have the people who need a place for the children to go that's safe and with some level, I'm even willing to think about how we attain a level of professionalization beyond what may be there now. But I want to make sure that we're not, by saying this, leaving a hole, deep hole underneath of that with nothing. And so I want to use the time between today and tomorrow to see if it's important. I believe we should actually have more home child care centers, not fewer. And I'm willing to think about how we do that and what that means. But I'm really worried about the loss of child care slots because I know what that means for people who are desperate to find them. And I know that we have a severe shortage. So I want to think about how we can bridge that gap. So I'm going to vote yes today because there's a lot of this bill that I support and I really appreciate the work. And I'm not standing up, I'm not trying to be negative here today. That's not my point. My point is I'm really worried about childcare slots for people who need them desperately. And I want to make sure that we're not in the name of whatever it is, the level we're trying to achieve, that we actually leave a whole lot of people with nothing. Thank you.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Essex.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm worried about this bill because I am concerned about slots as well. The predecessor of all of this knocked out 80% of the daycares in the state. So Grandma on Maple Street is no more. And I'm very bothered by that. As somebody who started a daycare when I was married and had 2 kids. We were not happy with the level of daycares and how expensive it was, with 2 parents starting out at a scale of not having a lot of money. One of the parents, just to go to work, was spending more dollars for daycare than what it was that parent was bringing home. So we started a daycare and probably didn't do it in a smart way, although we believed it was. We actually charged less. And at that time gave my wife at that time a chance to stay home and to raise the kids and to help other parents who were in the same situation as we were, not having a lot of money, but offering a very strong home-based child care center. And it worked very well. And I thought we did a nice job. And to this day, we are thanked by those kids that went to that daycare. So I think we're headed in the wrong direction in daycare in the state of Vermont. We don't have a very good history in the last 3 or 4 to 5 years as far as being very responsible to make sure that we are providing enough slots and competent daycares to where these parents can go to work and do a good job. I need to be a no on this bill, and I've wrestled with that decision. But I keep on going back to the decisions that were made previous to what this is trying to do, which is we knocked out too many daycares, and now we're trying to build back, and I don't know that we're doing it responsibly. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Addison.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill does not do away with family and child care providers. Family child care providers can continue beyond January 1st, 2029. It's the family child care provider license that ends then, and then after that, family child care providers would obtain one of the other 3 licenses. And so the idea of the bill is that there's a sort of legacy license for existing family child care providers that is provided first. And then after that, after January 1st of 2029, they would just go into the same licensure structure that others have. So it's not saying that there can't be home care providers after January 1st, 2029. And I just want to correct the record a little bit, Mr. President. We passed Act 76 in this chamber, in this building, 3 years ago, I believe it was. That was one of the most consequential pieces of legislation that I've ever worked on, and I think many other people in this chamber. The impact that that legislation had on increasing the number of childcare slots are available. In the first year alone, they increased 1,000 slots in the state. The number of new childcare programs, both center-based programs and home-based programs, have increased significantly. And I'm sure that the reporter of the bill can get us those numbers for third reading, but it was a significant increase in the number of slots for childcare. New centers opened in my district, in Middlebury and Salisbury, in Addison, in Ripton, and in, I believe, Starksboro. I'm sure the same thing happened in many of your districts too. Increased slots, because Act 76 infused a significant amount of funding, but also a significant amount of structure, a significant amount of respect, support, and energy into our childcare system. Act 76 was one of the most successful pieces of legislation to come out of this chamber in the past decade. And it is not correct to say that it reduced the number of slots in the state. It increased them. And this bill is getting at making sure that the system that was revived by Act 76 has high-quality educators to staff the programs that were created as a result of the good work that happened in Act 76. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Chittenden.
I want to thank my colleague from Addison, who just said what she said, because as a matter of fact, I do have numbers at my fingertips. Act 76 added 5,000 additional children and families to access tuition assistance. It added over 100 new childcare programs that have opened since Act 76, creating 1,700 new spaces, and 400 new jobs for early childhood educators have been created. This is all because of Act 76. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would love early education to work. I would love it to be affordable. I would love it to give results. But what I'm looking at is, since Act 76, there are some more statistics. The cost of education has continued to climb to among the highest in the nation again. And the educational performance on standardized tests among our students who are educated in our better system has continued to decline. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just heard the data from the reporter of the bill. I asked her to go back and double check for the most recent data, but I still want to see the data before the next reading. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. So it's becoming pretty evident that there won't be a unanimous vote on this bill. And much like my colleague from Chittenden Central, the reporter of the bill, I was not a yes at the beginning. We had a look at this last year in the Senate Government Operations Committee, took great testimony. There is a multi-year ramp to come up to compliance. I think that's important. I think it's now 8 or 9 years. So I will be supporting the bill, and I wanted to keep it short, so I did.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I hadn't really planned to speak, but it's hard to hear the most recent data reported and then to have the reporter of that data asked for more recent data. It may be difficult to believe, but the senator from Addison is absolutely correct. Act 76 has been, I would say, fantastically successful. It was meant to create slots. It has created 1,700 slots. It has created 100 new programs. Those are facts. So all I would say is you may have questions about the professionalization of childcare workers. Fair. But please don't question what has been a very systematic and successful move in Vermont. We have become a national model for what we're doing on childcare. And this professionalization step was always a part of the vision for what we're doing. So the idea was, yes, to create lots more slots, lots more programs, and then in the midst of that, to allow our workers to be paid a higher wage and to get them to a higher professional standard. So this is very much in keeping with that. As I said earlier, we've already passed out a version of this bill. So this is not the first time we've come to this vote. I am an enthusiastic yes, and I hope the chamber will join. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I can't let the bill go by with a vote without speaking to a bill that I have been working on for many years. So when we passed Act 76, Act 76 was, obviously there was a 10-year process to develop that bill with a lot of folks in the community. But my own experience with early childhood education goes back to when I was teaching liberal arts and working with early childhood educators, professors, and then teaching brain and behavior to some of the early childhood, potential early childhood educators at my institution, and know how undervalued both the students and the professors were. And they continue to be that way. And it's unfortunate because the knowledge that they carry about how to take care of a baby, to teach a baby how to read with saccadic eye movements by the time they're 11 months old. So we don't think about that. And as parents, we sit with our kids because we love them and we teach them to move their eyes from left to right or right to left, depending on your language, as they learn to read. So those little things are key for an early childhood educator to determine right from wrong before the age of 4. And by right to wrong, I mean when a doll's head breaks off or when a truck tire breaks off, that's wrong. And to understand that that's wrong. Early childhood educators understand that. We as parents, we spend time with our kids because we love them and we want them to know right from wrong. Educators learn the neurodevelopment, the relationship between what's happening physically, emotionally, and help kids grow at an early age. Now, one of the things that I did years ago, and I know there's not a lot of support for that bill now, or that law, the remote worker program, but when I interviewed remote workers to put that bill in place a bit ago, I found out that their #1 issue in moving to Vermont was childcare. We want to see good childcare centers that are licensed appropriately and run effectively. And guess what? We're working on that. We worked on that with Act 76. The other two things they wanted was a good public education system. And the other thing that they wanted to see was the environment and a place to live that they could enjoy, our state. So, Mr. President, all of those things come to a culmination of who's regulating the centers. The CDD regulates the centers, they're licensed. And now we have professionals who are working in those centers who are left without license, without oversight. This is an opportunity for us. This is a huge opportunity. We can take a step forward, not just in this state, but across the country, demonstrating how to do it right. We're talking about people who are putting their children into childcare, people who work, 2 parents working, 1 parent working, single parent family, and they need to leave their kids all day. They want to ensure that the care that their children are getting is equivalent to what they would get at home. They want to know that their kids are being taught to read effectively, that they have the emotional support that they need, that it is trauma-informed, as the senator from Chittenden Central has indicated earlier. So there's a lot here, Mr. President. It isn't just about the word educator. early childhood educators have been educators for a long time. You know, I won't tell you how long ago it was when I was teaching them. It was a bit ago. But they're educators. They do it in a different way. They hold the babies and do it in a different way. They work with a 2-year-old. They work with a 3-year-old in a different way. You know, and by the time the kids get to preschool, they're 4 and 5, go into public school, they're ready. And their parents know that they're ready. So, Mr. President, I honestly encourage the Senate to support this bill, send it forward. Sure, there are things that we may want to consider going forward, and if you have an amendment, bring it into our committee tomorrow. We'd love to look at it. And I know that it has a bit of a journey. It's not over, but, you know, please support the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of the bill, and I want to just articulate what this means to me as a parent of a young child who has had to do some shopping of childcare facilities. Because as, first of all, truly it takes a village, because sometimes places are closed and you have to have backups, and you have to have backups for backups of who's going to watch your small human. And so I'm sure, as any parent knows, you have to develop all of those. And there's always questions. Is this person a safe person for me to leave my child with? And what I see this bill as doing is answering that question. Is this a quality establishment? Are these people trustworthy to be watching my child? So, you know, just some of the questions that came up for me as I was shopping for a childcare facility. Questions like, how much time do you plop the kids down in front of a television? Like, how much screen time is expected? How much time are they spending outside? What are your disciplinary practices? How much sugar are you going to be giving my child? Like, there's this huge range of concerns that I, as a parent, am bringing to the question of, is this a quality establishment? So I don't see this bill as reducing the number of, for example, the family-based or, you know, in-home facilities that are not regulated programs. We're still going to need those. I know I have needed those, and I will continue to need those, and so many families in Vermont will. But for these regulated programs, it is going to give me, as a parent, a lot of reassurance that what they're doing, what my child is doing during the day, is in their best long-term interest, and not just, let's say, convenient to plop them in front of a television, as an example. Thank you very much.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Chittenden North.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess also as a parent, I have a 1 and a 3-year-old, so might be in the minority of the Senate once again about where I fall. But I also wear another hat where I'm the chair of the board of the center where my children go. So they go to a daycare center, child care center that we also offer other services to the community. And then also have the Senate hat on. So I think I'm pretty in tune with the early childhood education, and like the other senator from Washington, I don't want my child sitting in front of a television all day and eating sugar and things of that nature. I don't think we even have TV in our center, which is great. But I will say that last year when this bill came up, I was a yes. But if you give me long enough to think about something, that might change my mind. And after going through this bill again, the family provider section is one that was kind of a little bit of a holdup for me. Yes, I do understand you have 2 more years to be able to have one of those licenses, and that gives the folks the opportunity right now to be able to get that license. But I'm thinking 10, 12, 15 years out, if that person who is 15 years old right now and wants to have that and doesn't make it through the level, I believe ECE level 2 to be a family provider after January 1, 2029. I might ask the reporter of the bill that a little later, but I believe it's level 2. That could actually restrict the amount of spots that we have for our children to go to in this state. And, you know, I don't have a report on it. I have lived experiences of it. We have a lady in Milton who had a fantastic family provider area that she had, and talking about the kids that went through there, my age, you know, we have nurse practitioners that came through our program, engine builders, we have sonographers, we have software engineers, all went through that family program. So I don't want to discount what those programs offer to our state, and especially in areas where you might not have a larger center close by, and because we talk about not wanting to go for half hour, 45 minutes, an hour car ride to get your child to childcare. I'm fortunate enough where it's right in town, but not everybody is that fortunate, and sometimes you may have to, in my community, we have folks that drop off in Milton, and then they gotta rush to Colchester, and then they gotta come back towards Essex to get their 3 kids into different spots, which is very difficult, I would imagine. But I just want to bring up the fact that we don't want to limit these options. I know I've heard a lot today that we're not limiting it, but in a sense we are, because in 2 years, 3 years, you're not going to be able to get that family provider license. And I've come a long way. I've had a lot of good conversations with folks that surround this bill, and one of my biggest ones was with an ECE level 1, having that barrier there. You have to have 120 hours before you can be that ECE level 1. But come to find out, you can still work in the center. You can still work towards obtaining that. You still, right now, as being in the center, you have to have hours and trainings to be able to be, an assistant teacher in the center. So I've come back a little bit on that thought. I still think 120 hours is quite a few hours for somebody that's maybe right out of high school trying to figure out what they want to do with their life. You know, I thought I was going to be a CPA when I came out of high school, and I'm here now and not a CPA. Take that for what you will. So I don't want to have a barrier for 2 lanes, somebody that wants to get into the field that may not know if they want to go into that field, and then also if they want to be able to create that family provider role. Because we do need slots. I mean, childcare, if you are not on the assistance program for an infant child, can be several $100s a week, which is thousands of dollars a month. And we can't lose sight of that it is very expensive if you are not getting a subsidy to have your child go to a child care center. So having those family provider outlets, while also providing the quality of care, also overseen by CDD, I think shouldn't be lost on us as a body to restrict that avenue. But I guess I do have just a couple of quick, I know it's late, I know it's almost 2, I do apologize, but I just have a couple of quick questions for the reporter of the bill, if I could, please.
The reporter is interrogated.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can the senator tell me a little bit why the after-school childcare program is exempt from these regulations?
First off, Mr. President, if I swoon from lack of nourishment, I apologize. Please just pick me up and I'll try again. After-school programs are not being contemplated in terms of being regulated by OPR in this bill. Did that answer the question?
No, but I think what I'm getting at is that the center that I'm a part of as well, we provide the after-school program in the school, and those employees for the after-school center are providing care and education to the students that it's serving. So why would we want to exempt those individuals if the main point of the bill is having qualified individuals educating the students of our system K through 8 years old?
So my understanding, and if need be, maybe we can take a recess, but my understanding is that this bill is contemplating home care and early childhood programs and early childhood home providers, and not after-school programs. I'm not exactly sure what else to say.
I would.
After-school programs are a different entity.
Thank you, Senator. I'd be happy to have another, maybe the chair of the committee, answer that question. they would like to defer.
Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you. The after-school program is a distinctly separate program with separate funding, and that funding can be given to different entities, libraries, and others through grants that would support programs for kids when they are not in school. It's not necessarily after school, but it's out of school. So it's not this type of program. This is what we're talking about here are related to child care centers, regulated child and licensed child care centers, and we're looking at the folks who work in those centers.
Okay, I thank the senator for that answer. I guess at this time, I will, in the interest of time, leave the questions at that for today, but I hope, we can work over the course of the next day to look further at that family provider role and what that licensure could look like and what the requirements could be. Because I do understand that you would have another January 1, 2029 to be able to apply for that, but those folks after, that might not be an option unless they attain that ECE level 2 level. So I thank the reporter and I thank the committee for the work that they've done, and thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question?
Roll call?
Roll call has been requested, and when the vote is taken, it shall be by roll. The question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Health and Welfare as amended? Are you ready for the question? If so, the secretary shall call the roll.
Senator Baruch.
Yes.
Senator Beck.
No with explanation.
Senator Benson.
Yes.
Senator Bongard.
Yes.
Senator Brennan.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
No.
Senator Chittenden.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson. Senator Collmore.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Yulee.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hashim.
Yes.
Senator Heffernan.
Yes with explanation.
Senator Engel.
No.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator Major.
Yes.
Senator Matos.
No.
Senator Morley.
Yes.
Senator Norris.
No.
Senator Perschlick.
Yes.
Senator Plunkett.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale.
Yes.
Senator Bohosky. Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks.
No.
Senator Westman.
Yes.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
No.
Senator Clarkson. Senator Bohosky.
Those voting yes, 21. Those voting no, 7. The ayes have it, and you've amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Health and Welfare as amended. Senator from Caledonia for your explanation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Vermont is in the middle of a workforce shortage and affordability crisis. Increasing the requirements to enter a profession will exacerbate both of these problems and further increase the cost of early childhood education. I feel that this effect will be particularly acute in rural Vermont, and thus I vote no.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Oh, Senator from Madison, for your explanation.
I voted yes because the bill is a good bill. However, I'm very upset that parents weren't brought in to be a part of it because it affects their lives and their child's lives.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? If so, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. And you've ordered third reading of S-206. And that completes the orders of the day. Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Could we have quiet in the chamber, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. Pending announcements, I would move that the Senate stand in adjournment until 11 a.m. Thursday, March 19th, 2026.
Are there any announcements? Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Finance will meet in 10 minutes. We were scheduled to start at 1:15. I hope the cafeteria is still open so you can bring your lunch down.
Senator from Windsor.
Oh, Mr. President. Tonight is Farmers Night. Kratz Karamato will be playing, and I implore all of you to be there.
Senator from Washington.
President, Senate Appropriations will meet at 1 o'clock. Oh, wait, that was 55 minutes ago. We will meet at 2 o'clock.
Senator from Wyndham.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate institutions will meet at 2 o'clock.
Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Government operations will meet at 2:30.
Senator from Bennington.
Mr. President, the Senate Education Committee will meet at 2:30.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none. Senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate stand in adjournment until 11 a.m. Thursday, March 19th of 2026. Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we'll stand in adjournment until 11 a.m. Thursday, March 19th, 2026.